Let's talk about data types in Java. Hello, and welcome back to another video. Thanks so much for tuning in. As I already mentioned, we're going to be talking about data types. These are ways of storing different types of data, such as numbers, text, symbols, and they're very useful. Let's not waste too much time. Let's get right into it. So I have this class here that I've created, and a class is a container for data. So it contains methods and fields, which is what we're going to be using as data. So we have these two things here that we would like to access. Now, to actually access all of those in a different class, what we will need to do, we would need to replicate this entire class. That means copy down everything word for word here and put it in here. But consider we have a class that has a lot of stuff, like maybe 98 methods and maybe 57 fields. All of that would be very redundant and would be maybe difficult to read in code. So what we do, we create an instance of the class, an object of the class. First concept in object-oriented programming, classes and objects. So an object is basically a smaller version of a class. It's an object that holds data such as fields and methods, and it is a very smaller version of a class. So we can say oop, which is our class. We need to give it a name. Make sure the name is very descriptive, and you have to follow the camel naming convention, which is basically saying that the first word should be in lowercase. So you can say and then the first letter of every word that follows has to be in uppercase. So an object is fun. So as you can see, only the first word, the first letter is going to be lowercase. And then the second word, the first letter has to be uppercase, followed by every other word that follows is also going to be in uppercase. This is how you're supposed to name your variables. So this is going to be equal to a new keyword, and then you're going to say oop. So the name of the class. So this is the name of the class. We've created an object for it, and then we're going to store it in a new variable name here. So this is how you declare variables in Java. And what you can do with these objects is you can now access the methods by using the dot operator. So as you can see, we have got the fields and the methods. So instead of us having to copy down the entire class, what we've gone ahead and done is we have created an object, which is a compact version of that class, and we can still access the methods. It's pretty cool. So as you can see, you can now access it, and you also terminate each and every statement by a semicolon. As you see, I have used. This is absolutely useful unless it is a class declaration like this or a method declaration here. Very cool stuff. All right, let's keep things rolling. We can now talk about data types. These are basically different ways of storing different types of data. Numbers, we have got symbols, text. So how do you do this? We have two different types of data types. We have got primitive types and we have got reference types. So a primitive data type is like a very easy way of making a variable, like a number, very simple way. So what we have got a byte, which is a 8-bit integer, so we can say a byte, and this one is literally including numbers from -127 or -128 rather to 127. So the max value this one can store is 127. If you're adding 128 or 129, you'll get a problem because it is out of bounds. So 127 is the max you can carry on here. So that's the first one. The second one is a short, which is a 16-bit integer, and it can hold values from -32,768 all the way to positive 32,767. So a short will be equal to 32,767. Notice how I terminate each and every one of these statements with a semicolon. This is something that you have to do in Java, so you don't get errors, to know that this is the end of the statement. So we've got that, we've got this. Yeah, if we have an 8 here, it is bigger than what the variable can store. So we have 767. And if this is confusing, this will get confusing, especially for the bigger numbers. You want to have an underscore here instead of a comma, because a comma will separate 32 and 767. So you want to have a comma here, and this is how you would know that this is 32, 767. Very useful way. Next up, we've got an integer, which is going to be the default method. A lot of methods will return integers, and if you just assign a random number, it will be treated as an integer unless you specify it otherwise. So integer can hold values all the way to 2.1 billion. So the value is right here. And like I said, you have commas, it's going to be very complicated, but basically 2.1 billion. So this is 2,147,483,648. So that's the value that we're going to have here. We're going to remove this bit here. Next up, we've got long, which is the biggest value you can store in Java. Any number bigger than this will start giving off some problems, and we will not give the right value. So long, this is the biggest one you can have. And now this number, oh boy. So this is the number. This is a 64-bit integer, which is absolutely massive. And like I said, if your number that you're trying to store is bigger than this, then I'm sorry, you are out of luck. You are out of luck because Java cannot store numbers bigger than this. Now, when assigning a long value, as you can see, we have a problem here. You want to show that it's a long value by, even though you've actually specified that it's a long, you need to put a capital L at the end to ensure that you don't have problems. This is to show that it's a long value and not just a long integer. So this is a massive number. I'm going to attempt to read this: 9 quintillion, 223 quadrillion, 372 trillion, 36 billion, 854 million, 775,807. Please subscribe because that was not an easy number to pronounce. But next up, we are going to deal with decimal. So as you've noticed, we have only been dealing with whole numbers this entire time. So these ones cannot store decimal numbers, but let's say you have a number that actually gives a decimal. So you will either store it in a float, which is a number that has decimal points in it. So you can store numbers. You can store numbers up to 7 digits. So 7-digit decimal numbers. So it's very useful for storing numbers like pi, for a value of pi, for example, 3.1415 something. So just like the long, here you're going to want to put an F here, either uppercase or lowercase, both work fine. So you're going to want to show that this number that you've actually shown is a float. So you're going to put an F at the end of a float. Now let's say you want a number that is bigger, that is longer than 7 digits. Well, then you're going to use a double. So a double is like a float, except you can accommodate up to 15 digits of a decimal number. So this is much bigger way of actually storing it. So this one, once again, also works exactly like a float does: 3.141523, blah blah blah. As you can see, so this one, there's no need for you to actually show a D at the end there. You could do it, but then it's really not recommended. Now let's say you wanted to store a single character. You will use a character. So this is literally called char. So you can call this whatever you call. So a char, this is a character. This will be equal to, and this one, to store it, you have to single quotes, and then here you can pass in any one character. So as you can see, this one, so you can pass in a letter, for example, it would be S, or just a symbol. Basically, this is how you want to do it. That is all primitive data types. Now let's say you want to store text. Well, you're going to want to use a reference type because you cannot use primitive types to store text. So you're going to have to use a string. A string is how you use text in Java. So we're going to call it a string. So you're going to use the double quotes, and inside these double quotes you can pass in anything. So we can say, for example, hello, I am Void the coder. You can pass in a string. So this textual data is going to be passed in a string, and this is the start of reference types. Now, you cannot have methods with, rather you cannot use methods when you've assigned these variables, for example. So maybe we wanted to actually get the integer. So we can say an int. Let's find the methods that we can use. Oh wait, we cannot have any methods. These are just IntelliJ. These are just IntelliJ shortcuts functions that allow us to generate code, but we don't have any usable methods because this is a primitive type. Primitive types do not allow you to have any kind of data. But this is a reference type because the name starts with a capital S. It's uppercase. So primitive types will always start with lowercase letters, as you can notice. Reference types start with a capital S. Now, because this is a reference type, we can actually have methods. So the string dot operator, you will see we have ends with get bytes. We have all of these useful methods, all of these before we actually get any of this, and this is because it's a reference type. Now let's say you wanted to use methods on these. What you would need to do, you would need to use the reference versions of these primitive types, what we call wrapper classes. So we have byte, for example, so you can say byte is equal to a byte. I need to give it a name. So byte number is going to be equal to a byte. So as you can see, these are reference because both of these are going to return a byte. So they're going to be bytes. And now, because we now have access to that, we can now say number dot, and as you can see, we now have values. So all of these. It's a very cool way of doing it. We've got byte, and then we've got short, which is fine. We've got integer, we've got an integer. I've also got long. We have got a float. As you can see, we also have double. And for character, we have literally got character. So we can say character number is equal to a car. Equal to a car. So as you can see here, we can now access all methods that come with this. So this is how you would actually use reference data types with your primitive data types. So you could either just assign it with a primitive type or create a new reference type, and then you can actually store it in that. Pretty useful stuff. Hello there. So that was a brief introduction to variables and data types. We're going to be talking about the string class next. Very useful class, and we're going to be going through over some of the methods. But yeah, that was the video. Really hope that you guys learned something. If you did, leave a like, subscribe with notifications on so that if I drop the next video, you will not miss it. But yeah, that being said, thanks so much for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out.